All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're decoding Scents and Stories. They're a Pakistani startup that is literally turning the local fragrance market completely upside down. You see, historically, the fine fragrance market in this region was tiny. It really only catered to the top 1 to 3%, basically an elite upper-middle-class segment buying super expensive imported brands. But Scents and Stories, they are totally flipping the script by bringing high-quality fragrances straight to the masses.
And honestly, their growth has been nothing short of staggering. Over 40 outlets. I mean, think about that. How does a completely bootstrapped brand, meaning they took absolutely zero external funding or VC money, manage to open more than 40 physical retail stores across a developing country?
Well, here is how we're going to break down this wild success story. We'll start with finding the winning formula, then dive into the economics of perfume, track their pivot from clicks to bricks, look at how they're tapping the middle class, and finish up with a higher business purpose.
Okay, Section 1, Finding the Winning Formula. Let's look at how this empire actually got off the ground through some serious trial and error by its founder, Saad Afridi.
You know what's really fascinating here is that Saad didn't just wake up one morning and hit a grand slam. Not at all. Back in 2015, he launched these foldable water bags after a trip to Umrah, and honestly, they completely bombed. Then in 2016, he tried Wabies, a men's grooming brand. It did okay, partial success, but it was really hard to scale. It wasn't until 2017, with Aroma Pharmacy, an essential oils brand, that he finally hit his stride. But here's the real takeaway. Through all those early bumps, he was building his core e-commerce and operational skills. So by the time he launched Scents and Stories in 2018, he had the exact playbook ready for explosive growth. And man, did those early lessons unlock some massive scale. Look at where they are today. Over 300 employees. They're seeing a massive 50% year-over-year growth. They've got an active catalog of over 80 distinct fragrances. They've easily become a top 5 player in the local fine fragrance market, and they're doing it all with an incredibly healthy 55% gross profit margin.
Which brings us right into Section 2, the economics of perfume. Let's break down how you actually maintain a 55% margin selling perfumes in a developing market, especially when you aren't charging those crazy luxury prices.
So the secret sauce here is absolutely supply chain localization. It's a 3-step process. Step 1, sure, they import the custom aroma chemicals. That's the core concentrate. But the real magic is in steps 2 and 3. They source their ethanol locally, which happens to be a super convenient byproduct of Pakistan's massive sugar industry. Then all the blending, the filling, the packaging, they do it entirely local. By localizing all that stuff, they drastically slash costs and keep their cash cycle so positive they can practically reinvest their profits overnight.
To really understand the massive price gap between this brand and the ones you see, say, walking through duty-free, you got to look at the business models. Global luxury brands sink a fortune into original R&D, they charge a massive brand premium just for the logo, and they use super rare natural ingredients. Local brands operate a lot more like fast fashion assemblers. They spot global trends, tweak synthetic notes to match those popular profiles, and use that local assembly we just talked about to keep overhead astonishingly low.
To put this into perspective, even if you ordered the exact same fragrance profile, the cost of the raw base oils can range anywhere from $50 all the way up to $500 a kilo. That massive $450 gap, it entirely comes down to the mix of harsher synthetic chemicals versus those highly expensive, smooth, natural notes. Scents and Stories just expertly threads that needle, finding profiles that feel premium but skip that astronomical natural ingredient price tag.
But there is another wild layer to their product strategy, and this one is driven entirely by the weather. Because of the extreme heat and humidity in Pakistan, consumers there really only have one massive obsession, and that is lasting power. If you walk into any fragrance shop there, the first question isn't about fancy top notes, it's just how long is this going to stay on my shirt? They care way more about durability than they do about the subtle artistry of a scent.
So, how did they solve this climate challenge? They did something incredibly smart. The standard global concentration for fine perfumes usually sits around 15 to 20% fragrance oil. Scents and Stories cranks that way up, pumping their concentration to a massive 25 to 35%. This gives them an immediate, undeniable, unique selling proposition. It basically guarantees the scent survives the sweltering heat, perfectly giving the customer exactly what they want.
All right, let's transition to Section 3, from clicks to bricks. This is probably their most counterintuitive move yet, taking an incredibly successful online brand and pushing it hard into physical retail.
Seriously, this data completely flips the modern e-commerce narrative on its head.
We're constantly being told that physical retail is dying, right? Well, today, physical retail actually makes up a staggering 70% of their total business volume, with online dropping down to just 30%.
And the ironic part is, Saad, the founder, absolutely hated the idea of physical overhead at first. He thought it was a totally unnecessary risk. I mean, why open a shop, run the AC, pay someone to sit there and wait for walk-ins, when you can just optimize a digital ad campaign and ship to everyone from one centralized warehouse?
But as you can see here, he found a brilliant way to de-risk retail. Instead of building massive, expensive flagship stores, they went with a kiosk model. It cost barely 1 to 1.5 million Pakistani rupees to set up. They dropped these kiosks right into safe, climate-controlled malls where the footfall is already naturally high. And their real secret weapon? Digital synergy. Because they'd spend years absolutely blanketing social media with ads, mall shoppers instantly recognized the logo. They didn't have to build brand trust from scratch. Because of this, an insane 80 to 90% of their new physical outlets were actually profitable in their very first month.
Okay, moving on to Section 4, tapping the middle class. Because it's not just how they are opening these stores, it's exactly where they're placing them. Instead of just chasing the elite top 3%, they realize the real economic engine is the rising middle class.
Look at this geographic split. It's so interesting. Sure, half of their retail footprint is in the major hubs, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. That makes sense. But the other 50%? They are boldly expanding into Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. We're talking places like Falia and Gujarat. These are completely overlooked secondary markets that traditional luxury brands wouldn't even touch. And they aren't just throwing darts at a map hoping for the best. They're sitting on a goldmine of 5 years of e-commerce data. They basically comb through that data to see exactly where digital orders have been originating. If they notice a cluster of online sales coming from a small town like Falia, they know a physical kiosk there is going to be an instant hit. They are literally placing stores in locations where pent-up demand has already proven itself.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, a higher business purpose. Because if you look behind all the spreadsheets and supply chains, there's a really powerful ideology driving this company that goes way beyond just making a profit. Saad is actually writing a book right now, and the working title is Economy as My Jihad. It perfectly captures his mindset. He doesn't view building a wealth-generating business as some selfish, materialistic thing. For him, it's a noble, almost spiritual endeavor. It's about taking on the responsibility to uplift the entire country's economy, to provide real jobs, and to create genuine, lasting value.
The whole philosophy here is that businesses should be viewed as strategic assets for the collective community. You know, in developing markets, short-term extraction and rent-seeking are super common. So building something completely focused on the collective good, that is true disruption. Saad believes this is the ultimate key to helping the nation escape economic hardship.
So as we wrap up this explainer on the incredible rise of Sense and Stories, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Take a look at your own professional journey right now. Are you building your career or your business strictly to extract personal profit? Or are you building it to serve a greater, more sustainable purpose for your community? It's a massive mindset shift, and it just might be the actual secret ingredient to lasting scale. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and keep learning.